as a continent, we'll get to a stage where we can be able to self-sustain ourselves in terms of providing funding to the entrepreneurs that are disrupting different industries on the continent.
Welcome to State of Africa. Now, today we shine a light on young African entrepreneurs shaping the continent's economic future. We'll hear their journeys, challenges, and opportunities, from accessing finance and scaling across borders to leveraging innovation and digital transformation. With us, we have James Ruigu from Kenya, Andisiwe Sachwa from South Africa, and Evans Nombo from Cameroon. What I want to do is, let me get to Evans right now, because already you're in the healthcare tech space. I'm assuming there's been some uptake in your business. A couple of weeks back, we were at the Global SME Ministerial Meeting in Johannesburg, and one of the issues they were talking about is access to capital, access to finance for SMEs. How did you, overcome this particular challenge in getting that initial capital needed to take it from idea to an actual business?
That's one of the biggest challenges of entrepreneurs, especially across Africa and particularly in sub-Saharan Africa. Before I go deeper into the question, it's very important to highlight that, venture capital funding in Africa, more than 80% of it comes from VCs that are not necessarily domiciled in Africa, which means that on a personal level, when I say personal level, I mean like continentally, we do not really have solid infrastructures that enable investors to push money into young startups, especially early stage startups. And that calls for concerns, which is something that I think we'll progressively address. And then coming to my case in particular, getting capital for my startup at the start was not necessarily the easiest, because when I started, I was still in college. But one thing that is good with the ecosystem as well is that there are organizations that do offer grants. And one of the first fundings I received was a grant funding of around $25,000. And it was given through a partnership with the University of Toronto, which is mostly working to help health tech startups across sub-Saharan Africa and a couple of partner universities across the world.
Andisiwe, for you, how did you manage to start the business? Because clearly I can see you'll need your products so that you can take them to market. It's not a service, it's not an idea. You actually need the product in hand. How did you plug that gap so that you could get them and supply to your customers at the beginning of your business?
How I came up with my business was through the company that I was working for. I saw that, okay, there's a gap in the market for communications. And for us as customers to get these units, the radios specifically, to communicate was difficult. Even if you need the radios today, you won't be able to get the radios today. They'll tell you that they need to do a background check first. They want to see what business are you in, how much you are making. Then from there, they can program the radios the way you want them. The whole process, let's say approximately, it will take about 5 days. So I was like, oh, there's a gap in the market. Because if I need the radios now, I need to buy the radios now and use the radios. So with that, I didn't have any capital. But what I did with the small amount I had on my savings, I started. I think I started about 5 radios just to check that market. And also that I got lucky to get credit with the suppliers. Some of the suppliers here in South Africa, I was lucky to qualify for those credits. So when clients request stock, I'll be able to get stock and then pay them later after 30 days. And also, I also got grant from NYDA, one of the organizations for youth here in South Africa. But the process is long, and you need the capital as soon as possible.
We're in a room of entrepreneurs, and they're speaking about the same issue when it comes to access to finance. This is something that I'm sure isn't new to the conversations in the Attic chapter rooms. What are they saying in terms of how they're looking at getting these particular access routes to finance, to capital, to either start or grow their businesses?
We started out at Attic in 2021, and it was ideally, 3 friends realizing that, they're building businesses and it's a bit lonely. So starting out with meeting together, trying to brainstorm the challenges they're having and also getting solutions for the same. Then it grew to now we need, industry experts to try figure out some of the challenges we have. And so it grew over time. And one of the things we realized is we have been very big on mentorship. We've been big on capacity building. We've been big on helping businesses actually, build systems at every stage that they're in. But the one common thing that cuts across all businesses is, we've been mentored over time. We've taken up programs. We've also set particular structures for our businesses. Businesses are running, found product market fit. They've got customers, and so there's need for capital injection to scale. And that's where we've seen a lot of challenge with businesses, especially with the current financing models that we've seen. And so the conversation at ATIC amongst the young entrepreneurs, of course, the benefit of being in community is that you get to tap into a pool of different experiences, some of which have been, starting off with investing in SACCOs, and then getting financing from the same, getting financing from micro lending institutions and also other lending institutions. But the challenge here has been on the interest rates, because at times you'll find, you're getting the money, but what you need to pay back is actually doing a bit more harm to your business than good. So you'll either find you're sort of operating at the intended goal for the finance, for the money coming in wasn't really met. And so what we are sort of now looking at is how do we approach different institutions to come up with tailored models for financing, especially for young people. And one of the avenues that we've particularly seen is how practically a well-known startup or a well-known institution in Kenya was built, and that is M-Pesa, through corporate incubation. So looking at different corporate structures and seeing we have businesses that are in that line, so how could they be sort of incubated under them, so that they either receive the necessary infrastructure, which cuts down their cost, or they do receive some funding for that. But the primary avenues for financing have been a bit difficult for the young entrepreneurs we hold space for.
How important is mentorship for young entrepreneurs? And did a mentor help you at the start of your business or where you are now?
I think mentorship is one vital component in entrepreneurship. And I think James here will easily agree with what they are doing at the ATIC Center, because the best way, one of the best ways to learn is to, have conversations or engage with people that are actually where you want to get. So on my journey, personally, I've had a chance to engage with a lot of people in different domains that have actually facilitated, or I would say accelerated, my learning journey. For example, building our tech product, you need to have like a lot of background knowledge on, hosting websites or maybe hosting your data on the cloud and all those things. In as much as you have a technical team doing that, it is also important for you to have conversations with people that have done it in the past to give you a high level overview of how that process looks like, right? Because as an entrepreneur or perhaps as a founder, one of your jobs is to also know a little bit of everything. You need to know a little bit of finance, a little bit of marketing, a little bit of tech, a little bit of sales, and then maybe you have one core skill that you have that is what you're using to push your company forward. And having mentors is something that I will highly recommend.
Thanks for that, Evans. We're almost at the break, but James, I want to come to you before we get there, because we've seen how some can do it. You can go and get an online course, you can get a board of advisors or mentors, but there's also a peer-to-peer learning channel that's used, and that's where ATIC, I believe, comes in. How are they skilling each other, helping each other learn these nuances of business? Because you probably faced a tax issue, and you don't want the next person in Attic to face it. How are those networks working, and how can others replicate such models as they get into entrepreneurship?
I think one of the things that we did realize at Attic is initially we had like a general approach to how we approach our entrepreneurs. So we'd have sessions that will be for everyone, all-inclusive sessions. But then we soon realized that we'd want to meet entrepreneurs at the different points of need and also structure our programs in such a way that they can also add value to each other at different points. So that's where when we came up with tier systems, where we have say businesses starting out that's from 0 to 1 year, 2 years. So what makes sense for you is how do you register your business, for example? How do you find a product market fit? How do you get to market? etc. So we have that as the first tier. And then the second tier, which is businesses in the growth phase, where they're basically setting up structures that will then enable them to scale. So it's, how do you handle your finances? For example, you have customers coming in, you're making revenue. How do you read your books? How do you file your taxes? How do you set up for marketing, hiring, etc. And then now the last stage, which is the first tier, which is businesses that have been there for a while. So for them, they really do want to see how do I then scale across probably counties in Kenya or different regions. How do I get into new products? What happens when it comes to mergers and acquisitions? So what that does is it forms sort of a holistic business cycle, and everyone in the community can benefit from everyone, basically.
Thank you so much for that, James. Just unpacking how even this peer-to-peer learning not only is horizontal in terms of those at the same stage, but also there is a vertical element where, tier 2 businesses can actually essentially, lend a hand to those who are coming up and make sure they go up the ladders the right way. Fascinating insights in this first half of the discussion. What I want to do is take a short break. When you come back after the break, there's something you'd mentioned as well in terms of businesses that are going regional. I want us to talk about that. There's this talk of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. How is that looking for young entrepreneurs in terms of them extending their products or services beyond borders? Also want to speak to the issue of government, policy, regulation. Are they listening to the young entrepreneurs? And if so, what are they saying? What are they doing for their businesses? We take a short break. We are back on the other side. Don't go too far. This is State of Africa. Welcome back to State of Africa. We've heard about the challenges facing young entrepreneurs. Now let's turn to the opportunities and what it will take to unlock ecosystems that allow youth-led enterprises to thrive and compete globally. I want to get to Evans to weigh in on expansion. We're talking about scaling up our businesses as young entrepreneurs. Is it easier for a tech business to do that?
Scaling a tech business particularly can pose some challenges. For example, in the healthcare space, we can all agree that they do come with a lot of regulations that you need to abide by. The way they handle patient data, for example, in Nairobi, Kenya, won't necessarily be the same way they handle patient data in Ghana or South Africa, right? So even if your product is tech-enabled, if you want to implant yourself in a particular country, there is always a need to, have a baseline understanding of how to, navigate the different regulatory challenges. And I think one other thing to mention as well is that when you're scaling a tech business, one core thing is also to be able to integrate into ecosystems where you're going in terms of payments, right? If I'm scaling my company to Kenya, I wouldn't expect Kenyans to pay with, let's say, Ghana cedis, right? So you also have to be able to plug yourself into the financial instruments that are being used into that particular ecosystem. And that also comes with regulations. You might have taxes that are imposed on every transaction. You might have some ceilings that you cannot cross. You might find it difficult to work with some banking partners in terms of how you either remit your money or get money from abroad to your company. So those are some of the challenges that can be found cross-border in Sub-Saharan Africa. And I think the advent of the African Continental Free Trade Area is something that looks promising, even though, as Nana highlighted, has so many challenges because the rate of ratification of the deal has not been the greatest, and there are very few countries that have been able to implement that. Even though there is a huge business, a huge market opportunity that comes with such a disposition, about 3.4 trillion in that order, if I remember well. So I think the major problem, of course, does lie at the level of making the bureaucratic processes a little less challenging for entrepreneurs, so that we can create more value for our continent and make sure that we can easily move our products across borders.
Thanks for that, Evans. I want to talk to Andy Siwe, speak to Andy Siwe on this as well. What has your experience been in terms of cross-border trade? Have you managed to supply across South African borders? And if so, how did it work? Because even as we talk about the challenges, we're also looking at the opportunities therein, because that really is why business people, why entrepreneurs in business, they can see the opportunity and they're striving for it. How has it been for you, Andy Siwe, in terms of getting to this cross-border trade?
For me, in my experience, was with a potential client in Botswana, actually. He was willing to buy about 150 units of the rugged tablets. So I gave him a quote. The client was happy with the quotation. But the issue came with the established businesses. They create barriers, right? And it was difficult for us to sell the unit to the gentleman in Botswana because of the barriers, also the taxes, because now he needs to pay me tax so I can pay the government tax and also pay tax in Botswana again. Then the deal didn't work out, which is unfortunate.
But I also want to jump to James as we talk about this, because you can hear what's being said in the room, the issues of double taxation. There's also this particular issue when it comes to policy that looks good on paper, but yet hasn't been actualized on that. Again, I want you to take us into attic rooms when these particular conversations are happening. How are entrepreneurs looking at challenges like cross-border payment, because of different currencies, transport of goods across borders? How are they dealing with these particular challenges and getting the opportunity out of them?
A couple of conversations I've had at Arctic with entrepreneurs who are scaling across regions. It's been also, as mentioned by Francisca and also Kunchu, not been very easy for them. But a couple of solutions that we've seen is on one of the solutions we've seen is for product-based businesses, is when businesses come together and aggregate on, say, containers. So get shares, like a share of a container, then pack their goods. And so they have more or less one consignment, but shared amongst a couple of businesses, which helps, share the burden in terms of cost, but also when it comes to the policies that the individual businesses have to bear, for example, when it comes to taxes, and also, what do you call them, cross-border tariffs, then the individual business has to, absorb them individually. But what I've seen work out pretty much well is when businesses come together and do it together. And so for charges such as cost and also other freight charges that will then be shared, it makes it a bit easier for them. Then what they can handle as individuals, and they do handle as individuals. And then, another one which was pretty brilliant is, getting contact people in different countries where they can carry out business on your behalf, especially for a service or software-based businesses, where it takes a lot of trust, which is well nurtured within us as Africans, but also having people probably, I think Kunchu will tell you, having studied, say, at ALU, then you have presence in a couple of countries virtually by having classmates from those different countries. So using such a network to help you move things around a bit more quickly But also then the question becomes sustainability of that path, especially where you're not really assured of how policies or structures are set up, how soon policies or structures will be set up to enable you to do that yourself as a business, but that as a makeshift solution does work.
What I'd like to do is go around the room with your parting shots from this, because we have heard what needs to be done. We have looked at some of the challenges and opportunities as well. But as we bring this to a close, Evans, I want to start with you on this. What would be your parting shot today, not only for you, but all the other entrepreneurs that you represent by being in this conversation?
It's indeed been an interesting conversation. I think my parting shot will mostly be around the aspect of funding early stage startups, especially, I mean, in Africa, right? Because the understanding is that it's very, very difficult to get any form of funding in Africa when you do not have traction, when you don't have figures to show for, as opposed to our counterparts in the West, where an idea can literally get you a $2 million check without necessarily having to prove anything. So I think we should be more open to the aspects of, trying to harness good ideas from founders by encouraging them or by believing early enough in them without necessarily needing them to prove that they already have sufficient capital, sufficient funding. Because entrepreneurship is I would say it's a game where you bet on the most promising idea or startup and see which one eventually makes it. So it doesn't necessarily need you as a founder to come up front with maybe all your savings and block everything into the business, unless maybe perhaps you're going for, let's say, an SME or a traditional business. But if you're going for scalable business models, then it is very important that we get that liberalization on how to fund early stage startups. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Evans. Funding being very key and a vital pillar of entrepreneurship. Thanks for that. James, I'll come to you as well. What's your parting shot? And I'd like you to speak also to peer-to-peer learning and these networks that ATIC is really putting together as you bring this to a close as well.
I think for me, my parting shot will be one to entrepreneurs. You cannot build in isolation. Okay, you can, but it will be a bit more difficult. So the best thing will be, find like-minded individuals, find a peer community, find a peer support group that you could work with to, one, exchange ideas, traverse through the different challenges together and come up with solutions to, commonly faced problems, because with that you create a pool of resource, being entrepreneurs, and also a pool of knowledge and experience resource that you can also present to policymakers or government to make it better for the building of Africa. And to policymakers, to governments, is to recognize, we've had it time and again that the greatest resource for the African continent is its youth. And it's good that, we're already seeing a lot of proactivity when it comes to building businesses. The youth are not willing to sit on their laps, but going out there and making significant change to their desired future. And so to this, it will only be for the already existing, policymakers and also the government to hold the hand of the youth and to ensure that, the policies and the frameworks that they're setting up have the best interests of the youth in mind, and also the future of the continent. And by listening to the different stakeholders and by being more of enablers to the entrepreneurship ecosystem, we are then guaranteed to have a better future for the African continent. So that will be my parting shot to both the youth and also policymakers and government.
Thank you so much for that, James. And Isiwe, I come to you. What are your remarks as we bring this conversation to a close today?
With the policymakers, all I will ask from them is that if they can try and reduce the compliance cost, it's too much for the small businesses. And if they can try and support our policies, maybe if, let's say, for smaller businesses, if we can get some sort of a discount to get the compliance and policies That's number one. Number two, if you are a youth entrepreneur, seek networking, seek mentorship. I will also do the same. Be visible. There is a growing culture of innovation out there. I believe we'll do better.
Thank you so much for that, Andy Siwe. So Evans Nombo from Nairobi, James Ruigu from Nairobi as well, Francisca Asiedu, who joined us all the way from Ghana, and Andy Siwe Sachwa from South Africa. So, many thanks for making time to be on this particular episode as we look at young entrepreneurs and how we can actually seize those opportunities, but also look at how we can navigate these particular challenges as we move it forward.